Hello and welcome to Novelty Show, episode 7. This is my channel here. I'm Kat. I'll let our other ladies introduce themselves here.
Who wants to go first?
Alexa.
Okay. We do this every time. I'm Alexa Dunn. My author tube channel is Alexa Dunn. I am a traditionally published author. I have one book out. I have another one coming out. Books. Yay.
And my name is Lainey. I have the channel Ginger Reads Lainey, where I talk about books and writing. I do a lot of writing vlogs, so that's me.
And this is Novelty Show. This is a bi-weekly YouTube live show that we do. We rotate between our channels, so there is a link down in the description of a playlist so you can catch up on previous episodes if you haven't seen those yet. Today, we're going to be talking about critique partners, how to find them, how to work with them, and how to be a good critique partner yourself. Because as we've discussed in some of our previous episodes, critique partners are vital. They are very, very important.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So let's start off with what are critique partners? Alexa, do you want to take this one?
Sure. They're magical creatures from the beyond. No, a critique partner is a fellow writer with whom you exchange manuscripts. Sometimes it goes one ways, but let's start easy. You exchange manuscripts, you read each other's manuscripts, and you give each other critique on your manuscripts. So it's a reciprocal relationship with a fellow writer where you're both giving constructive criticism to make your manuscripts better.
Mm-hmm. Good. And yeah, you basically covered why you need critique partners as well there, but let's dive into that a little. Well, we can dive into because it's more than just making your book better. As we've talked about in previous episodes, like working with critique partners has helped all of us grow as writers so much, because giving feedback, receiving feedback, just that practice of identifying what's working and what's not working is so valuable to level up as a writer.
Yeah, and I think it's the what's not working, but it's the why. Working with another person to figure out the why and how to actually communicate that to another person, thinking about how you would want to hear something, can really help you understand the whys in your own work. So it makes you better at self-editing if you have strong critique partner relationships, I think.
Yeah, I agree.
It's about diagnosing. Like if you're working on your own project and you can tell that a chapter isn't flowing, it isn't working well, you might not be able to pinpoint why. But having a critique partner who can read that and give their suggestions, even if they're wrong, even if the reason that they suggest is not what actually needs to be fixed, just getting that feedback, getting that other perspective really, really helps.
I also think that when you're writing, you get in such a tunnel because you see the book and you're really close to your own book and you love your book. And then it can be a little scary having people tell you essentially what's wrong with your book. But they're identifying problems that you can't on your own. And that is why they're so important to have.
Mm-hmm. And why it's also important that you find people who are actually willing to give you critical feedback and not just praise you. This is why you maybe don't want to have your mom be your only critique partner, because
that doesn't count. Well, someone asked in the chat, what's the difference between a beta reader and a critique partner? I think this kind of illustrates it.
I have so many thoughts on that.
Yeah,
I do too. And actually,
our next question on the outline too. So perfect.
Oh. Well, who wants to go first? Because I have questions about this myself. Okay, I have opinions, and I don't know if they're the right opinions.
Yeah, the thing is, people use these terms interchangeably.
Yeah.
Yes.
Use them for
I don't think they are. I think they're very, very separate.
Yeah.
So to me, a critique partner is again, the reciprocal type of relationship. They are another writer that helps you on a craft level. Craft, which is the plot, the world building, the characters, everything that kind of encompasses storytelling. And then to me, a beta reader is someone who's there for the reading experience as a reader. So I don't have a lot of beta readers, but the beta readers that I do have are people who aren't necessarily writers. They're just avid readers. And they're there to read the manuscript like they would pulling a book off a shelf. And they're there to tell me like what's working and what's not working in like a reading experience sense than a craft sense.
Yeah, that is the same definition that I would go by, except I also just call my critique partners beta readers sometimes, because that phrase is very common, and you know, people kind of know what that means. They'll get what it means when I'm saying that. Like I don't really use actual beta readers as like just a reader reading the complete story and giving me feedback. I use critique partners, or like alpha readers, which is another thing we might want to mention, which is kind of a mix between the two. I would say an alpha reader is someone who reads your rough work and gives you feedback on that, but not necessarily like in-depth critique partner exchange feedback. Though again, I use all these words interchangeably a lot.
Same, and I think that's where the confusion comes from. So I agree completely with your definition, Lainey. I agree. But I also use them interchangeably.
See, I don't, because I have such strong feelings about it. Like, my critique partners are my critique partners. That is it. They're not my beta readers.
So my problem, I think, and I think this is where some of the confusion comes from, is in fandom, you call everyone a beta. Anyone who reads your work is a beta. But the thing is, in fanfic, my betas, the ones I'm thinking of who I worked with, were essentially critique partners. We just didn't have that vocabulary, and we never used that vocabulary. And as far as I know, I think fandom still pretty religiously sticks to beta. And so I think that leads to extra confusion and different definitions depending on your background.
Yeah.
So I agree, but I further confusion by calling my CPs betas.
Also, critique partners, it isn't always necessarily a partnership where you're exchanging.
Yeah.
And someone might be doing the role of a critique partner and giving you an in-depth like storytelling analysis, but you're not doing it for them. It is still a one-sided thing. So
I do a lot of those. Actually, because I love critiquing novels. So I've done plenty where they've sent me their book and I've just given them an edit letter. I'm definitely a critique partner, but there's nothing reciprocal about it.
Yeah.
So it gets a little fuzzy.
I think a critique partner is just someone who gives like craft analysis in like their critiquing sense. To me, like I feel like.
And yet, shall we talk about levels of critique partners? Because some people aren't good at that. But they're still technically critique partners. And I think something, Kat, slap me on the wrist if I'm jumping ahead on an outline here. I think what's interesting to talk about is how to actually find people who are good at being critique partners and to obviously get better yourself, because I see a lot of situations where people are like, oh, I have CPs. And I'm like, do you? Because someone's not giving you the feedback you need. And not everyone's good at it. It is a skill that it needs to be learned in many cases.
Yeah, that's actually right up next on the outline is...
I'm psychic, it's fine.
Yeah, finding critique partners. How do we find them? How other people can find them, how we specifically found our own, and how to vet them. So let's start off by talking about, in general, how to find critique partners.
It's hard.
Hard.
And it's ever evolving too. Like you find critique partners where you find writing community, and where you find writing community keeps changing. And people are constantly trying to create resources specifically for CP matching, and they never last, because a CP match resource is only as good as a robust pool of writers actively using it. And very often a great resource will pop up, but then all those people find critique partners, and then that resource doesn't work anymore. I know that's really pessimistic. So, meaning I found a lot of mine on a blog that doesn't do critique partner matches anymore. It's like a defunct blog. I found them on Reddit on a sub that I technically moderate that's not very active anymore. So that's not great either. Twitter, I found them on Twitter, which remains pretty decent actually.
Yeah.
I think the best thing is to just get involved in as many writing community spaces as you can, and find the ones that you feel suit you the most, based on like what genre you're writing, what category, YA, adult. And just like immerse yourself in those spaces and try to make connections with people before you go on like a critique partner quest. Like just being friendly with people is the first kind of step, I think, in a lot of cases. How I specifically found my critique partners back in the day was I had an aspiring author blog, because in 2009, that's what aspiring authors did. It's not 2009 anymore. Not a lot of aspiring authors have blogs. You'll find more of us on YouTube. So like that was a great way to like connect with other aspiring authors. We would comment on each other's blogs back and forth. And eventually when it came time that I needed like someone to provide feedback, I had friends, acquaintances in my own comment section that I could ask. Even though I actually never asked anyone to be a critique partner, my critique partners all approached me because I have social anxiety and I don't like talking to people. So
I think the majority of people sometimes on Twitter have social anxiety, because I know I did too. Like I'm always like nervous to like reach out to someone, and that's like what's happened to me too. But I think all of my critique partners I have found like through Twitter, but also like an offshoot of Twitter. So like I found one through Camp NaNoWriMo, and then I found one through a hashtag on Twitter. I think it was like CP match, hashtag CP match. And then I found another one through another author tuber, I guess. So it's just putting yourself out there. It's scary, but it's necessary. Follow some people, and then once you kind of have like you're liking people's things, then you can just like slide into their DMs. I've done that to one person. But I've only done that once. So
I have done it more than once. But it's like a dance. It's like a delicate dance of like, when's the right time to be like, your thing sounds cool. Do you like the sound of my thing? Yeah, Twitter. So I've rolled into DMs during pitch contests, honestly. I've looked at them. CP Match is a good one. That's what I would do on Reddit. Like if someone posted their query, I'd be like, hey, you want a CP? And actually, a resource I will mention because it's fresh and it's current, yay! So to help people looking right now, Right On Con is in, I think, 2 weeks, and their forums are always really good places to find critique partners. That is a resource because Right On Con was around in like 2013, 2014 when I was querying. The forums open on February 1st. The forums are free. And they also just launched a specific CP matching thing of some sort. I haven't tried it, obviously, because I don't need any right now, but it's worth checking out. Because it's like, you know that right now, anyone on the Right On Con forums is actively trying to query and needs feedback on their work. And you can read the samples that people post and then private message them.
Yeah,
I think they have the forum going right now.
The forum is supposed to open February 1st, but the CP thing is open.
Yeah, the CP one is open, and that's an option. But
I will also suggest, I don't know how active it is this time of year, the NaNoWriMo forums are also a great place to connect with other writers. And again, I don't know how, I've only really been a participant in the forums during NaNoWriMo season, so I don't know how active it is off year, but it is still active, and people are searching, like at the beginning of the year, there'll be like a forum for critique partner matches and stuff like that for people trying to, they've been revising their NaNoWriMo novel for a couple months and they're ready for some feedback.
And actually, I just had a crazy idea, because YouTube is a good place to find critique partners.
It is.
Kat, I'm so sorry if I'm hijacking your channel, but people could comment on this video like when it's done. And like, if you're looking for a critique partner, like maybe give like a one-line pitch and you might find some people, because the YouTube AuthorTube community is booming. There's so many aspiring writers on here, but we don't have any mechanism to forge those kind of connections formally. I think what ends up happening sometimes is like you slide into someone's DMs on Twitter because you know them from YouTube. Have done. But yeah, maybe we can have some love matches because of this video.
Yeah, if you guys want to drop like your elevator pitch, or put like your Twitter handle, or you can put your email, but I don't necessarily recommend that. But yeah, and please don't be shy. If you see someone who has a good pitch, like reach out to them. That's the number one thing, getting critique partners. Like, you don't be shy, be brave. Like if they say no, they don't need a critique partner, that's fine. Like I know the rejection is scary. I feel it too, but like, don't be afraid.
We all have a one that got away. I actually have a few, but what's really funny is one of the ones that got away from me, I commented on her blog back in the day, and she's like, oh, I don't need one right now. And now we're really close friends, and now I'm her CP. And I remind her constantly that she turned me down. It's funny. Yeah.
Okay, let's see. So how do you vet critique partners? Like, you put a comment on this video and some random replies to you, like, I'll read your book. How do you know if you can trust them? How do you know if it's a good idea to send them your 80,000 word book you've been working on for 6 months?
Well, I mean, I feel like the good practice is don't send the whole thing at once. I've broken that rule. My like closest CP is one that we both exchanged our manuscripts out of the gate. But I do have critique partners where I exchanged only like 3 or maybe the first 50 pages, 3 chapters of the first 50 pages, and you just comment on it, and if they like it, if you think they gave valuable feedback, then that's maybe someone you want to keep around.
Well, and also if you're exchanging partials like that, read their writing. Part of the vetting process is asking yourself, is this person kind of in the same like realm as me currently in their writing and their aspirations? So if you read it and you go, oh, I like this person's writing, so I feel comfortable because I know that they can do what I want to be better at, or what have you. Or simply just, if it's not about a rando commenting, if they do have a Twitter profile, or not even an aspiring author website, or an author tube channel, it can be kind of like, vetting isn't just like, do I like what they say? But I always like to think about, do we have the same goals? Are we on the same page? So you can look like, oh, this person also finished their first draft like a few months ago and have been revising, and they also want to query in the spring, whatever it is. I do advise looking for that, because not everyone's editorial opinions are going to be created equal. And yeah, give them a trial, but also like check them out. Make sure you kind of are on the same page.
Yeah, I think now that you say that, like, I feel like all of my critique partners that I've gotten in the past year have all been in like the same level and also in the same part of our journey.
I think that's really important personally. For forging long-term CP relationships. It's fine. Like, I have friends who are CPs who haven't even finished a book yet, but like, I know like they have the same goals and aspirations. They know what they're talking about. They're great critique partners. Like, it's not a hard and fast rule. But I also have had cases where my CP relationships have kind of puttered out because people have decided not to query again, have decided that they're not going to even write another book. And then, that's not going to be long-term usually. You have to kind of be going in the same direction, I find.
And also, you'll get the most out of a critique partner by having someone who's at your same level, or who is slightly above you and can help you grow. Whereas on the flip side, you critiquing someone else who is at a lower level, like maybe they're really a brand new writer, that could be good for you, like learning to critique, but you probably won't get as much out of their feedback because they aren't quite like at the level enough to be helping you grow.
Yeah. And something to that, some people don't like this opinion because they're like, but isn't it great? You get someone who's way ahead of you to help you. I'm like, that's not critique partnership. That is mentorship. And not everyone wants to mentor a much newer writer.
Yeah.
So you're exactly right. Those tend not to be as reciprocal. So if you decide to get into one of those, just know going in, like, you're really more of a writing mentor. Or also, I think it's worth knowing, like, if you exchange chapters and you're like, holy moly, this needs more work or more craft learning than I can handle. Like, it's not your job to provide paid editorial services, to provide the level of what a paid editorial service would provide. Critique partnerships should be about developmental, big picture kind of things. Someone shouldn't expect you to copy edit their manuscript. That was a really jumbled answer.
Well, I think what you're saying, it's like, it's hard. I don't know how to articulate it either. But yeah, okay. Well, since we're kind of on the topic of mentorship, Alexa, why don't I throw it to you again so you can talk about author-mentor match?
Yeah, my sidebar. So I do run an author mentorship program, and Lainey's in it. And it pairs age-attended published writers to mentor authors. And so like that's a perfect example. Like they're signing up to help someone whip their manuscript into shape, and they don't expect any reciprocation. So that's kind of a different situation. And if you need that on your manuscript, you can seek it out. But I will say, almost every single person who's selected for AMM has critique partners. You shouldn't seek out mentorship in lieu of critique partners. And mentorship also usually is most beneficial once you've learned base level craft in writing.
Yeah, I will absolutely agree with that. Let me see. What do we have here? So we've mentioned a little bit about this, about how we would give our critique partners like, the first 3 chapters or the first 50 pages, like not the full manuscript at once. Let's talk a little bit more about our specific processes with a critique partner. So let's say you finished revisions on your novel, and another critique partner friend maybe did too, and you're going to swap. How does that go?
Well, for me, we put our manuscripts up on Google Docs, and we go through it with like inline comments, highlighting things and like leaving comments on like certain passages or certain things. And then at the end, we do like an edit letter type of thing. Sometimes I'll do edit letters by chapter, and sometimes it just kind of depends on how I'm feeling while I'm critiquing. But it's a lot of comments on the manuscript, so they still feel like they're getting their worth out of it. And I feel like for me, my critiquing style is constructive, a lot of constructive, but I'm also like a huge cheerleader. I love commenting things like, oh my God, I love this character, or I can't believe they just did that. I think that helps the person just as much, because I get those kind of comments as well. I like the compliment sandwich.
Yeah.
I like cheerleader. But I need the constructive as well. So I try to balance it out. I fangirl a lot, but then I'm also like, okay, but this is not working.
Yeah, I love that, because you also get reader reactions in addition to like the critique partner suggestions and feedback. So do you talk to them IRL, like in a Voxer chat or anything, or is it just text online?
For me, I do everything. Like I'll comment in the manuscript, but then I'll like go to her like Twitter DMs and like I'll comment that way, or we'll hop on Skype and stuff like that. But also my main critique partner, we became friends through our critique partnership. So like we're super, super comfortable with each other. And yeah, that's just like our relationship.
Yeah.
So this actually brings up something, kind of relates to a question asked in the chat about how much do you say about your book when you're seeking critique partners. And this is where I want to say that when you are advertising for critique partners, so to speak, it's not just about your book, it is about your style, because I think it's important to say up front how you work, what you're willing to do, and also what you're looking for. And what's so funny is, Lainey, what you describe reminds me far too much of line edits. I will not go through a manuscript and leave comments and notes. That makes me want to die. And so I'm really upfront with people. I'm all about intense edit letters. So I will read your book on my Kindle. It's the only way I'm going to read it, because I'm not going to read it on the screen. We all have our tics. And I do intense edit letters. Like sometimes they're 4 pages, sometimes they're 10. Like I give you big picture, everything I love. I do the compliment sandwich. And then, but I break it down by topic or theme, and I go through it. I'm like, character agency, character growth, romance, pacing, like anything that I see. And I give like a dump of like, this is what you're doing, this is the issue, and this is how I would fix it. I am one of those CPs who does give what I think they should do. And the key is you can always disregard what someone tells you, how someone tells you to fix it. But I won't lie, I'm usually right. And that's the thing. My style is very similar to how an editor at a publishing house would do it. And the other thing that I like to give within that is questions. Anytime I have a question, I jot it down and then I deliver like my questions. And I love to receive that as well. Because if you have a question, that tells me something's off. I failed at something. And so I want to know any question a reader has while they're reading.
Yeah, I really agree with that question thing. That is so useful. And also not just if you have a question, then something is off, but ask me your question so I know if my mystery is working, if I know that the reader is wondering the right questions.
Yes.
Yeah, that's super helpful. So when I first started like critiquing other people's novels, I did more what Lainey did. I would like go through it and like leave like inline comments and like maybe a paragraph or two at the end of each chapter, just like about what my current thoughts and notes were. And then at the end, I would do like an overall kind of edit letter. But I haven't critiqued like that in a while because I found it a lot easier to read like all at once and like take my own notes and then compile my notes into like one big thing. Although most recently when Christine and I were critiquing each other's work, we would read each other's stuff and then talk in person because like when we were doing this, it was like right nicely in between convention season. So like at BookCon, we would have like a critique partner meeting and discuss it for a night. And then a month later at VidCon, we would have another discussion about the last bit that we read, which is very helpful. I think also what Lainey said about having a critique partner that you're very close with, it doesn't need to be that way for every critique partner, but if you have someone who like, you can text at 2 in the morning and be like, I think I might need to delete this character. What do you think? And they can like give you feedback and talk you through it. That can be super, super helpful.
Yeah, I have 1 to 2 of those on every book, meaning it's the G-chat person, the person who I'm G-chatting with all the time, who the poor soul has to listen to me spitball ideas. And then while I'm drafting, I'm like, what if I did this? And I send them chunks of text. The poor person. But I always have someone who does that for me. Because that's such a fandom thing, though. It's because that's how I used to write fanfic. I love that instant feedback. So I didn't have that on my first novel I wrote, but I've had it ever since. And I'm very spoiled. Because once you find great CPs, hold them close to your heart and keep them.
Yeah, for sure. They are so valuable.
Like my critique partner, she has like a really weird sleeping schedule. So like I'm asleep, I wake up at like 6 a.m. and I see all these like 3 a.m. messages from her, like freaking out over this and this and this. And then at the very end, she's like, never mind.
I didn't like that. That has definitely been me at some points. Like I've absolutely done stuff like that. So let's talk a little bit about how to take feedback, because this is something that is never easy. Like no matter where you are in the life, in your career as an author, like feedback is never the most fun thing. So yeah, how do you take feedback? How do you have someone tell you what's wrong with your book and not cry?
Oh, there's no crying. I get angry. No, it's a natural reaction. We all get defensive the first time we hear criticism. So whether it's reading an edit letter or something from my agent or my critique partner has vomited into a G-chat like, oh, I didn't like this. The first reaction is always like, well, you're wrong. You just don't get it. You missed something. I never react immediately, like meaning I don't, kind of respond. I read. I let myself have feelings. Sometimes if like it's from one critique partner, I can then go to another one and be like, do you think this about my book? And like we talk it out and they always reassure me. And then like within 24 hours, like it's usually a day later, I go, they're right. Okay. And then I can get to work.
Yeah, I definitely have to sit on critiques before I like really implement it, because sometimes I'm like, no, they're totally wrong. And then like 3 months down the line, I'm like, they were right about that.
That's happened to me too. 6 months later, oh shit. I apologized to one of my critique partners in my acknowledgments because I was like, you were right. Because I ended up changing something. I was like, shit.
Yeah, I mean, it's it's very natural to get defensive and like even I mean, I don't know this based off of personal experience, but I've seen it from authors on Twitter who like turn in their 12th novel and they get an edit letter for their 12th novel and they still have to like sit and like be defensive and kind of like, oh, what, I've done it wrong. Like they still feel that like rejection almost, even though it's not, just they feel the critique, even though they've been doing this for 12 books and like they know that they're not like a hopeless, terrible writer. Yeah, it's just a very natural like gut reaction of, no, you're wrong. It's perfect.
Even though you sent it to them because you know it needs work. And I also think like even with Compliment Sandwich, it's like our eyes glaze right over the good stuff and go right to the criticism and we hone in on that. And that's all we can think about until we calm the F down. And I find when I reread critique I receive, then I'm like, oh, they said such lovely things. And all I focused on for the last 24 hours is the one thing they didn't like. So, oh, I had a thought and it just flew out of my brain. Oh, because let's talk about, based off of this, the gut reaction of like, I hate them, they're terrible. And then 24 hours later, we're fine. Sometimes we're not fine, because I think we should talk about when you get a critique and it's so off base or it's so mean that you really shouldn't, it's a sign that they're the wrong critique partner for you. Have you guys experienced that where you had to basically like break up with or ghost, I'm guilty of ghosting someone who was just clearly not a fit?
Well, for me, I've never really had that kind of feedback before. And
lucky bitch.
I know, like, so I don't know how to break up with critique partners because I've never had to do it. So
I've never had to do it either. I mean, again, I haven't had that many critique partners.
Yeah, me either.
I haven't finished a novel in like 5 fucking years. But the closest I've had to that experience was in my creative writing class in college, because, you know, it's a class of 30 students. They're all interested in different.
Everyone has an opinion.
Fortunately, I was so lucky that my teacher was a YA author. So like the class was very YA friendly, which I loved because I have heard stories of like creative writing classes where they're all about the literature. They like look down on anyone who writes YA or genre sci-fi, anything like that.
That was the college I went to.
Yeah. That's so like I feel so lucky that I had such a great creative writing college experience. But there were people in the class who didn't like YA and who didn't like my story, and my teacher loved it. And I'm like, she's a published YA author, so I consider her opinion more valuable than your guys' opinion.
Yes, so this kind of harkens back to vetting. So my advice here, this has happened to me, and I'm like, I hope it's not because I'm terrible. This is where it's important to think about genre. And I should say, when you're vetting your critique partner, they don't have to write the exact same thing as you. And it's actually often better if they don't. What's more important to me is that A, they can write period, but B, that they read your genre. Like, you don't have to write thrillers to know how to critique a thriller if that's all you read. Or like if you love YA, but you haven't read one, you still have a pretty good handle of the genre. But if you are a hoity-toity literary great American novelist, all caps, yeah, you're probably going to shit on a genre YA project because you're going to have all these nitpicks. And that's when you as the author can go, you know, this opinion isn't valid because they don't know what they're talking about. And that does happen. Or even sometimes you can discover just a lack of fit for your writing style. Like if someone is like nitpicking every single choice you're making on the page, sometimes that's just a sign that they don't like your writing and you don't have to work with them. And so I'm not going to give very helpful advice because I honestly just ghost people in these situations. But here's the thing, I've been ghosted too. So it's totally fine. We're writers. We hate confrontation. But if you feel up to it, you can just do a polite after exchanging partial, oh, I'm not sure if we're going to be a good long-term fit. I wish you the best. Or you can ghost them like me. So, but it does happen. But you should look for those signs of like, do they just not get your writing?
Yeah. The same thing about not every book is for every reader. Like,
exactly.
even if you are like strictly in like YA fantasy, that still doesn't mean that like every YA fantasy you're gonna love. There's gonna be little things about people's individual writing styles that you either gravitate towards or you don't. Like, I personally tend to write in a very like stream of consciousness, like voicey. I start a lot of sentences with like and or but or stuff like that. And some people are just not going to like that writing style, and that's fine, but they're not what I am going to want in terms of feedback, because I don't want people who are trying to like change my book to be something it's not. You're looking for someone who can give you feedback for the book you're trying to write, and to make that book that you're trying to write as best as it can be, and not turn it into something else that they want to see.
Yeah. We have a good question in the chat, which is, what if you read a CP's book and you aren't a big fan? Without spilling tea, has this happened to anyone, and what did you do?
No, not to, I mean, I read like things in my creative writing class that I was like, this is not my kind of thing. I consider myself a pretty like flexible and like good reader, in that I can usually try to see like what they're going for. And even if it's not for me, I can give them at least some feedback that I hope will be useful to them, to try to see like what they're intending to do. But I don't know, again, this hasn't happened a lot to me, so I don't have a solid answer.
It doesn't happen to me either, but I've done the same thing that Kat does, where I'm like, I'll just still like give the best I can give. But when it comes to like long-term CPs, I like all of my CP's books, but I think that's also because like I have a really great relationship with them, that like I'm someone who, if I really like the person, I'm gonna really like their book. It's just like, that's just how I work. I don't separate anything. So yeah, so like my critique partner, everything she writes, I'm gonna like. So yeah.
Again, I feel like a terrible person. This has happened to me. I'm gonna just assume it's because I have critiqued an obscene number of novels.
Yeah,
it's just volume.
Yeah, you critique a lot, but it's bound to happen when you're.
I love critique. And my MO, I do the same thing, Kat, honestly, where I try to think about what they're going for, even if it didn't work for me. I try to think of who their ideal reader is, and the most constructive feedback I can give to help them. And I still do the compliment sandwich, but I tend to hold back on my like most raw feelings, because the way I see it, even though I hated it, it doesn't benefit them for me to unleash all of my like snark on them, which I could do. And by the way, my first version of an edit letter is always snarkier than the final version. I always write it out in a Google Doc, and I edit it like 4 times to soften, because my default mode is snark. But that's why like I'm always honestly annoyed when those times when you do get someone who sends you their full snark and you're like, you suck. It's always creative writing classes though. It's always like that dude bro who thinks that whatever. But that's my MO. I try to be as kind as possible, but then I very quietly don't read more of their work.
Yeah. So here are a couple questions. Victoria Reeds asked, do you ever feel obligated to change things because your CP suggested it? And then Elliot also asked, do you have to change things that your CP tells you to change? And the answer is no, you don't have to change things. Like, they're just giving you suggestions. And the feeling obligated thing is a little bit iffy, because you can't help if you do feel obligated to do that. But I think it's important to kind of let those changes sit for a while. Like, you shouldn't be jumping into revisions the day you get your feedback. You need like that emotional spike right there is going to be, you want to give it a couple days, let the feedback settle in, really think about the changes, like let your mind like really process and think about what the story would look like if you were to make those changes, and just take time to process. But no, you absolutely do not have to use every suggestion that they say.
Yeah, what I do is that I really lean on my CPs for this. Like, I will talk to them, be like, okay, so how can I troubleshoot with them basically with that problem that they have. I'm trying to see why they thought that way. If I can still have it, but work on it and try to like wear it to the level where they think it is working.
Yeah, like you can fix the problem in a different way than what they suggest.
Right. Yeah, and I think, yeah. No, sorry, you can go.
Oh, I was just saying that is universal. This goes beyond critique partners. This is because it'll come up with an agent, it'll come up with an editor. Like, if your job is to find the solution that sits right with you as the author, it's their job is to identify a problem, not to tell you how to fix it. And so, yeah, you're welcome to disregard any specifics that just don't feel right for you. But also, as we hinted, it's not a one and done. You can 6 months later still be chewing on a note that you didn't like. And maybe you queried some agents and it didn't work out. And then you revisit that note and then you edit. So it's not always like you disregard something forever. You can come back to things later. It should be kind of an organic process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. So let's see. So there's another little kind of like a bonus thing of best and worst critique partner experiences. Do we have any of those? Any that we can share?
Why is it always me?
Because you've had so many critique partners.
Okay, vaguely. I have had cases where I've spent, and this is actually why I stopped doing line editing, why I stopped doing what you do, Lainey. I just couldn't take it anymore. Because we all have that time where we're burned, where we spent just tons of time meticulously going through something and giving really good notes on a line level. And then you read the next draft and they didn't take any of your feedback on board, none of your suggestions, not even your like editorial, your grammar fixes that you literally were pointing out something that was wrong. Yeah. I've had that happen. And it's just like, I'm just done. I'm not going to waste my time if someone's not going to learn and grow. That's happened to me before. And often I will say to people, that can be a sign that the individual isn't on your level and isn't ready to go where you want to go. And it can be just a case, it can be a sign of a bad fit. If someone doesn't take on board feedback well and doesn't actually make substantive changes to their book.
Yeah, or they're just not ready at all for that, like because they're gonna publish it anyways or something. So they think it's easy to like disregard that. Yeah. What about a best experience, Alexa? Do you have any like really good?
Oh, I have plenty of those. Thank God. I love my critique partners. My favorite thing is when I just like when they listen to me because the poor things. I'm the worst at brainstorming and G-chats. But and the support. I love the support. I love when you get a rejection, especially when you get rejections or bad review, like your critique partner is the person who's like, I believe in you. I love your writing and I love your book. And to me, that's always the best. And I do that for my critique partners. When something bad happens to them, I'm the one being like, no, stop. You're going to sell this book. And even if you don't, it doesn't matter because you're a great writer. Like, that's my job too. And just, I've had a few cases where my critique partner, probably my best recent one, is For the Stars We Steal. I didn't know what to do in my first act. I knew I had to replace a scene. And my critique partner was like, what about speed dating? I was like, I literally love you. So it's this cool thing that's in my book now because a critique partner had a great idea. So, yeah.
I don't think I have any bad experiences. I just like...
I'm done with both of you.
And I don't know. I feel like it's just in the past couple years, 3 years, I feel like is when I started to really find critique partners and to read my work and stuff. And I just have awesome critique partners. And like my best experiences is with like my main one. Like we met each other for the very first time this year. I flew down to where she lives and we met up for like the first time and just had like a full weekend where we just talked about our projects and helped each other. And like I was with her when I found out that I got into Author Mentor Match. That was just like a great, because she helped me so much on that book that got me in there, because she actually read the first draft, which I know I've saw some comments about like when is a good time to have a critique partner look at your work. Yeah. But for me, it's with my one critique partner, we exchange as we're writing pretty much. Like I have recently read some pages that she just wrote over the past month, and she read my first draft. But then I have other critique partners where I'm like, I don't want you to see it till it's like at least good.
I have that too. And I think that's a good thing to have. More than one critique partner who does different things for you at different points in time.
Yeah, that's a great idea. So I don't really have a worst experience either. Sorry, Eliza.
It's fine.
The only thing I would kind of count that as is just like the not great feedback from some people in my creative writing class. And I have given my first like 30 or 50 pages or whatever before to people to read and haven't gotten feedback yet. Which isn't a terrible thing, but
it happens though.
It does happen, yeah. And obviously, I'm not like upset about that. Honestly, I didn't like follow up with them either because I was just like, we'll ghost each other. It's cool.
Well, I think that's worth sharing because I know you guys have had mostly good experiences, but I do think it's worth warning or reassuring people who have struggled to find good critique partners because I hear more often than not that people are struggling. It's super normal to send your book to someone and then the wait is eternal. I also think the hallmark of a really great critique partner relationship that is working is pretty quick turnaround times on both your parts. I think that's a healthy, good CP relationship. Unless you have a CP where you know it takes them 3 months, but they're gold. And ghosting happens all the time. That happened to me so much early on when I was trying to find the right CPs. And honestly, that also happens with friends. That's why sometimes it's bad to have friends be your critique partners because really they're actually beta readers, using that definition.
That's what mine were beta readers, not. And I read in the first 30 pages, and it was just kind of like a read this for me thing. Which in some cases, I'm glad that they didn't read it because now enough time has passed that I'm like, those chapters were bad. Like I need to fix them before anyone can read them. But for best experiences, I'm going to say it has been working with Christine more recently because we are such close friends already and we can just like talk to each other on Voxer and go back and forth like in the middle of the night. When I was working on Storyteller and I realized I had to like recast my love interest and like delete this entire character, combine 2 characters into one and like do this whole thing. Like she was the first one who I went to. I was like, hey, I just had this crazy idea. Do you think this would work? Can I do this? And she was able to like talk me through this very dramatic change to my book. I think the most important thing is a good communication, like someone who you're comfortable communicating with, where you're not like terrified of their feedback. Or you're not afraid to ask them for clarification of what they mean. You're not afraid to like discuss their notes.
And they're not afraid of making you cry.
And they're not afraid to give you feedback. Because
real feedback is valuable. And it's the line with a friend. The closer you get to a critique partner, you need them to become the only person who can truly be honest with you without you freaking out or hating them. And it's hard to find that person. But that person is valuable.
Yeah, kind of off of that, like I know when Amanda, who's my critique partner, when she sends me stuff, it's going to be like harsh, but she wants to see this be great. Like she wants me to make the best book that I can. So I know it's like always coming out of a place of love, basically. And she's just not being critical to be mean. So I think that's important with relationships as well.
I think that's a really important thing is also like trust and support. Like you want a critique partner who is trying to help you and who is not going to do something like get jealous and not give you the right feedback. Like be like, I know how to fix this, but I'm not going to tell her because we're in competition with each other or whatever. Like that is such toxic critique partner thinking. You want someone who's going to lift you up and help you. And there's no room for that kind of like petty jealousy in this kind of relationship.
And it's okay if you end up with someone like that. That's when it's totally okay to cut them off.
Yep. Bye.
Although it's also sometimes the time to have a conversation because you do have maybe years under your belt of, I know you're feeling feelings. I need you to be happy for me, but know that I'm going to support you. Because we should do an episode on friendships.
Oh,
publishing friendships, because that's a whole other thing. But I think more in a more broad sense, another valuable thing about critique partners that we're all dancing around. It's not just about the writing. It's not just about the feedback on the specific books. It's the support for everything, for querying, for rejections, for just days when you feel like a huge imposter, like you're the shittiest writer in the world.
Yeah.
And I think that people all sometimes hyper focus on, well, it has to be about like the book and the notes on the book, but being a good CP is so much more than that. And you also have to look for fit in terms of like support and friendship, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We had a good question in the chat, which is, how do you become a better critique partner? How do you learn to be a good critique partner? Do you guys have tips?
Oh, this is difficult.
Yeah.
The best way to do it is to practice. You don't need to necessarily be critiquing another aspiring author stuff. Like writing book reviews is practice. Reading books and identifying like what you like about it, what you didn't like, how you would fix it. I mentioned in the last maybe it was the last show. I don't know. I mentioned not too long ago that I want to do like an in-depth video about how I would fix Crimes of Grindelwald because I have ideas. I would detail, like really get into like how I would actually fix it. I would suggest finding something that a book or a movie that doesn't work for you, and like practice really articulating why doesn't it work, and do the same for things that do work for you. You know, read your favorite book again and be like, this is why this works for me, and just try to pinpoint things. Practice is the only way to do it, really.
Yeah, I agree, because I don't feel like I was the same critique partner that I was 3 years ago. I feel hopefully that I'm a lot better than that I was. But I know that we've been talking about like the support and like really being close to our CPs. I just wanted to say that like that's something that will happen over time. Like you're not going to get that right away. Not so much your first critique partner, but like in the first like week of you exchanging pages. Like my relationships have been developing over the past couple of years, and that's why we're like at like such a tight kind of relationship now, is because we've gone through like 2 books with each other. We've talked so much over chats and stuff. It's something that if you find one and you hold on to it, you'll get that like really glowing, supportive relationship with that person.
I do have some practical tips. I agree, doing is the best thing, but read a ton, read good books and bad books, articulate your issues with them, and the question thing, the thing where I like to receive questions and give questions, I actually think that's also great practice for you. If you practice that style of critiquing, even if you're not stating the why, just telling someone where you were tripped up, where you were confused. Also, I think telling people when you're bored can be really helpful, because it usually tells them they have a pacing problem. Starting off there, I think can, over time, you'll become a better critique partner. You're still like being useful to that person by providing them with questions, even if you're not being like, and this is why. And then it develops over time. So
I want to drop 2 more kind of resources. One is I've seen a couple videos from booktubers lately about how they annotate books. So Katrina from Little Book Owl, she did a really good video about how she like really gets in there and like annotates her books and like highlights them in like different ways of like, this is exposition, this is important stuff. So check out that maybe, because like seeing how people annotate books, that might be a good way for you to try annotating a book and like identifying good and bad things within it. Also, another kind of resource that I've mentioned before is there are some great channels on YouTube that do like video essays, like diving into specific story aspects. Like there's one about how like J.K. Rowling writes mystery that really delves into like how specifically J.K. Rowling writes mystery and like weaves them in, and like the tips and tricks that she uses. So resources like that could be really interesting in giving you like kind of a direction of how to start like critiquing and like trying to analyzing written work.
Yeah, then generally just educating yourself on craft, which can only help your own writing, can also help your critiquing. Watch videos, yay, or read craft books. Anatomy of Story, it's going to happen.
Anatomy of a Story is great.
Well, but then you're also a great critique partner because you're able to say, hey, I saw this really awesome video on YouTube that helped me understand my story better. Maybe this will help you. And so you're critique partners and you're also exchanging resources.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, I think that's just about it.
Hold on. Someone in the comments said there's going to be a CP match on Twitter on February 2nd.
Hey,
good
timing.
Good. I found one of my CPs through CP match. So basically what I did was I liked her pitch and then I slid into her DMs. So that's just how it happened. And now we're really close.
Also, I want to do another shout out for author mentor match because you have a deadline for that, right?
I do. Our submission window is March 1st to the 5th. And so actually, if you're thinking of submitting to that, find a critique partner with CP Match or with Write On Con in the next couple weeks and get to work.
I also think
mentor match, since you are applying to work with a mentor, you need to have a revised completed manuscript that
yes, Kat.
I'm working on it. I'm behind on my revisions. I know. So you have a month and a half about. No, it's like a month now.
Like a month. Oh, and this isn't a CP thing, but if you do want feedback on, I think they're doing queries and first pages. The current mentees are doing a feedback giveaway. And if I were much better at my job, I would know where to find that. I will figure it out. It does exist, though. I know they're doing it.
It does. I feel like I might have retweeted it once, maybe. I'm giving one whose so.
Oh, there you go. Yay.
Yeah.
So yeah. And actually that's a great way to get feedback from someone who's experienced at giving feedback. All the mentees have great critique partners and are critique partners. So you can start to see what good critique looks like and maybe use that as a benchmark for finding your own dedicated critique partners.
Also, isn't AMM doing like #AMM party?
Yes, and that's another connection thing. And here's the thing, if you see someone in the AMM hashtag who you vibe with, slide into their DMs. You could become their critique partner. I know a lot of AMM mentees found critique partners just through aspiring to be chosen as mentees. I know that you found some critique partners, Lainey, through AMM as well.
Yep.
Okay.
Not to just plug myself. Sorry.
Like AMM is a fantastic resource. Good job creating it, Alexa.
Well, I co-created it with Heather Kaczynski, who's been my critique partner since 2014. So I love her. She's one of my stable critique partners.
Yeah, cool. So I think that's just about it for this show. We will be back in 2 weeks on Alexa's channel. We don't know what that topic is yet. And also, here's the thing. We have an announcement to make that I forgot to mention at the beginning of
You did, yeah.
But we are starting a podcast. We are very, very excited about this. Some of you guys have been asking us to like start a podcast version of the show. And so, yeah, we're looking into it. We're going to do it. And we're going to have some more information very, very soon. We're going to be revealing it on
by the next show for sure.
Yeah. We got a little bit held up on our timeline, but more news.
We get a bunch of Ravenclaws together, and we plan.
We need to be prepared, you know?
Yeah. We need a Gryffindor to like kick us in the butt. We'll figure it out.
Otherwise, we're just going to strategize for 8 years.
No, it won't last that long. It's happening.
Yeah, it's going to happen. So yeah, that's our show for today. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Tune in 2 weeks on Alexa's channel. And again, there's a playlist in the description if you've missed any of our previous episodes. You can check out those. And yeah, podcast and podcast info coming soon.
Yeah.
As always, you guys can follow us on Twitter. You can send us tweets and questions using the hashtag Novelty Show. And yeah, we'll see you guys in 2 weeks. Bye.
Bye.